Jaden Ivey just nuke his own career? The Stargard hopped on IG Live, roasted the league's entire vibe, and the Bulls instantly showed him the door. Now, the internet is absolutely buzzing with whispers of Major League icons dodging federal heat and heavy bans, all supposedly tied to Ivey's explosive broadcast. We are peeling back the layers on these wild claims, separating fact from fiction. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel before we dive deep. Buckle up, folks. On March 30th, 2026, the 24-year-old former top 5 draft sensation went entirely rogue online. Firing up his socials, Ivey crossed a line most athletes wouldn't dare approach, broadcasting a highly unfiltered take to thousands of viewers. He took heavy shots at the association's June Rainbow initiatives. Management did not hesitate, cutting his contract before the sun even set. Deemed toxic to the locker room, Chicago dropped an official memo pulling the plug on his tenure in record time, leaving fans speechless. The lightning-fast firing sent shockwaves through the hoops community. Everyone was still processing the sudden exile of the rising star. He instantly became the hottest topic in sports media following his massive rant regarding the league's inclusivity campaigns. But the outspoken athlete didn't just fade into the background. While global reactions poured in, he doubled down hard and fast, refusing to be silenced. Hopping back online post-firing, he called the front office straight-up fibbers. He claimed they booted him purely for spreading the gospel. Tagging himself as misunderstood and labeled insane by critics, he surrendered it to divine timing. Then, the real fireworks started. He began dropping heavy names. We are talking absolute legends here. Broadcasting to his massive following, he dragged the Bulls, the league office, and even took aim at Steph Curry, King James, and his airness, claiming their spiritual compass was broken. He boldly stated that all the championship hardware collected by those legendary icons means absolutely nothing when the final trumpet sounds. Clearly, trying to salvage his professional basketball career was off the table. This dude found a totally different calling. But the backstage drama actually revealed a deeply layered narrative far beyond a quick internet outburst. Following marathon-length digital sermons, his heavy-handed preaching inside the locker room had already started rubbing the coaching staff the wrong. While that tension boiled over, a wildly different league controversy was echoing through federal courthouses across 9 different states. For years, a sprawling underground network had tangled up over 20 retired pros in a massive legal battle totally unrelated to free speech. This was a pure medical money game. Interestingly, Ivey's urge to spill the beans somewhat mirrored how that massive hustle was finally busted. Both scandals blew up because someone decided to sing. Even though this clinic hustle involved dozens of recognizable retired athletes, the operation was basically a standard ghost billing scam meant to milk the player health fund for over $5 million. Federal prosecutor Damian Williams noted the mastermind caught a 10-year stretch in the pen. Former champions got tagged, legacies crumbled, and the whole house of cards fell simply because a single insider flipped to the authorities. 2 completely separate messes, 2 unique flavors of dropping dimes, yet both scenarios packed brutal penalties, severely fracturing the league's infamous unwritten gag order. Want to know how this kid wound up attacking basketball royalty on a public stream? Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. To trace the meltdown, we got to jump back to New Year's Day, 2025. 30 matches into the 2024 season, he was dropping a personal best 17.6 buckets nightly, even sinking a clutch 4-point dagger right after Christmas to seal a 114-113 Detroit victory. But disaster struck on January 1st when his leg violently snapped. Late in a 105-96 win against Orlando, the rising talent went down hard, writhing in obvious agony. Medics instantly threw towels over the gruesome scene, while rivals and teammates alike built a human wall to block the camera. Carted off on a backboard, his fate was sealed after a hustle play from Cole Anthony ended in a brutal lower body collision. That bone fracture instantly killed a breakout campaign. Robbed of his best year yet, the young guard was forced under the knife for major reconstructive surgery. Locked in an endless rehab cycle, his entire worldview shifted violently. The psychological burden was incredibly heavy. In a raw, 2-hour podcast chat, he confessed to nearly taking the final exit after that devastating Detroit setback. Acknowledging he almost checked out early on multiple occasions, he firmly stated he carried zero shame, crediting divine intervention for keeping his heart beating. Painting a chilling picture, he recalled holding a handful of despair while his desperate partner begged him to stay strong. Wrestling with severe inner demons during early rehab, he eventually embarked on a deep quest for absolute truth. A profound religious shift ultimately yanked him away from the abyss. Chosen 5th overall by the Motor City squad back in 2022, his newfound faith also helped him crush intense off-court temptations and ditch a highly destructive lifestyle. Spilling his guts, he admitted basketball was his sole obsession before discovering his higher calling. Entering the pros, totally secular. That severe trauma, the shattered bone, the crushing dark thoughts laid the groundwork for a massive spiritual reboot. He hit the hardwood again with a completely rewired soul. So, when Motor City finally shipped him out, the stage was set for chaos. Via a massive 3-squad swap in early 2026, the guard landed in the Windy City. Traded for Kevin Huerter right before the deadline buzzer, Chicago handed him a blank slate, but we all know how that ended. Smash that like button. What is up, Hoops fans? Hit subscribe. Following a disastrous stint in Detroit where he completely busted as a top 5 selection from the 2022 draft, his highly anticipated fresh start fizzled out instantly. The 24-year-old touched the hardwood just 4 times before losing his rotation spot and suffering a physical setback. His final outing resulted in a brutal 124-105 beatdown courtesy of the Boston Celtics on February 11th. Afterwards, his lingering knee issues returned with a vengeance. By March 26th, team doctors officially shut Ivey down for the entire campaign thanks to a busted left knee. 4 days afterward, an angry Ivey fired up Instagram Live, sparking absolute chaos. Initially, the public totally missed the fact that this viral broadcast was far from a random meltdown. It actually served as the boiling point following weeks of extremely aggressive and strange locker room conduct happening entirely out of the public eye in the Windy City. Chicago Sun-Times beat writer Joe Cowley reported that the young guard's relentless habit of aggressively preaching to his peers, staff members, and media personalities made Chicago's front office seriously doubt his basic social skills. Management wondered if he could simply chill and vibe with his 14 teammates. Cowley suggested management didn't just cut him over his controversial anti-LGBTQ remarks, but rather due to a massive, ongoing toxic vibe that simply cannot survive within professional basketball sanctuaries. The leaked details were absolutely wild. Beyond bizarrely interrogating journalists about their private bedroom activities, the guard constantly created extremely awkward situations for the roster, literally pointing fingers and telling guys who was going to heaven or hell. Insiders claim he constantly slapped spiritual grades on every single franchise employee, judging their entire worth based strictly on his own extreme religious views. This was not just a guy casually mentioning his beliefs. He was aggressively getting in faces and trying to police everyone's private decisions. Enjoying the video? Drop a like. During that infamous broadcast, he brutally roasted the association's supposed ethical downfall, shouting that the league shamelessly promotes Pride Month to the entire globe. He claimed executives were basically begging fans to throw a massive party for sinful behavior, splashing these campaigns across massive signs and city avenues. He angrily questioned why his own strict religious declarations were being silenced, while the league openly embraced diversity. Furthermore, he took vicious shots at the Catholic faith, explicitly branding it as entirely fake. His explosive rant wasn't just targeting one specific topic, it evolved into a massive, paranoid takedown of everything he considered evil, spreading through professional sports and modern culture. Immediately after Chicago handed him his walking papers, the guard jumped onto a microphone, fiercely denying that his locker room presence hurt the franchise. Speaking on a popular podcast, he called the official allegations complete garbage, insisting he treated his peers perfectly. He swore his on-court chemistry was flawless, claiming he always executed the correct reads and followed the coaching staff's daily blueprint to absolute perfection. According to him, no matter what grueling tasks management demanded, he remained fully committed and ready. He then pivoted to a defense that his hardcore fans totally ate up. He argued his release happened solely because he loudly broadcasted divine scripture and relentlessly pushed his faith. In his mind, sharing his harsh version of salvation was the actual reason management deemed him a problem. The embattled athlete then pointed fingers, highlighting a massive perceived hypocritical bias involving a totally different elite hooper. He bitterly complained that Minnesota standout Anthony Edwards basically got a mere slap on the wrist for an almost identical, controversial mistake. Remember back in 2022, Edwards caught a measly $40,000 penalty from the commissioner for posting anti-gay rhetoric online. Reflecting on that specific drama, the ousted guard called out the blatant hypocrisy. He noted the superstar never lost his roster spot or faced banishment, simply because of his franchise cornerstone status. Meanwhile, he argued that his own injuries made him an easy target for sharing his reality. Eventually, guys from his old squad broke their silence. Chicago playmaker Josh Giddey described the entire saga as a massive bummer, acknowledging the immense underlying basketball talent involved. Giddey publicly expressed pity over the messy divorce, genuinely wishing his old locker room neighbor would seek professional guidance to handle whatever internal demons he might be battling right now. While that healing journey clearly won't happen in a Chicago uniform, Giddey prayed he finds peace somewhere. Meanwhile, sharp-eyed basketball analysts sensed a much darker, more complex psychological angle unfolding. Behind the scenes, whispers revealed his relentless crusade to force his strict religious dogma onto the rest of the Windy City roster was the ultimate catalyst for his abrupt termination under the vague detrimental conduct umbrella. A few sports media personalities looked completely past the hateful social media outbursts, seriously theorizing that the young man was desperately crying out for psychological intervention. Unsurprisingly, the internet's reaction to this entire fiasco completely polarized the sports community. A vocal faction actually rallied behind his controversial takes, notably including gridiron star Trevion Henderson. Shortly after, football mastermind Mike Vrabel had to do damage control regarding his players' public endorsement, stating he champions free speech in his locker room, provided guys actually understand the heavy topics they are discussing. Despite the endless media circus, a single, undeniable fact remained absolutely certain. This controversial athlete is still cashing his entire $10.1 million paycheck this year, regardless of Chicago kicking him to the curb over that highly publicized toxic locker room behavior. The massive direct deposits are secured, but his professional hoop dreams look completely dead in the water right now. Even though he is only 24 years old with undeniable raw athleticism, front offices will treat him like radioactive material, practically tanking his odds of ever securing another lucrative roster spot. Love these crazy deep dives? Smash that subscribe button. Because while that drama dominated Twitter, an exponentially darker basketball crime ring was silently tearing through the justice system for quite some time. In this insane saga, flipping and spilling secrets to the feds carried massive real-world stakes penalties, calculated not by canceled endorsement deals, but with actual decades behind cold steel bars. A federal judge formally handed former athlete Terrence Williams a crushing 10-year sentence for masterminding an absolutely massive, complex hustle designed to rob the league's official medical assistance fund blind, successfully stealing over $5 million. The sheer audacity of this criminal enterprise was honestly mind-blowing because of how aggressively basic it was. For context, this specific organizational insurance pool exists solely to cover critical medical expenses for current and retired superstars, plus their loved ones. However, between 2017 and 2021, the alleged ringleader teamed up with over 12 co-conspirators to execute a massive grift, violently abusing the system by demanding cash for fake doctor visits and imaginary teeth cleanings. As the grift evolved, these rogue athletes flooded the administrative offices with completely fabricated paperwork, successfully siphoning a staggering $5 million from the charity pool. The mastermind, who went 11th overall to the old New Jersey franchise back in 2009, functioned as the absolute boss of this underground syndicate. He carefully engineered the elaborate ripoff, actively convincing his former peers to join the dark side. His partners in crime, which shockingly featured a corrupt West Coast dental specialist alongside shady physicians spread across multiple states, continuously supplied him with bogus receipts to keep the illicit cash flowing. Welcome back to the channel, Hoops fans. Hit subscribe because today's story is wild. The hustle was brutally simple. Terrence Williams hooked up ex-athletes with phony health bill. The guys would hand these forged documents over to the basketball league's backup medical coverage, acting like they just dropped serious cash on pricey doctor or dentist visits. The league's coverage would then cut them a fat check. Naturally, Williams grabbed a massive slice of the pie. He masterminded this whole shady operation, sending fake paperwork to the league's coverage just to rake in huge illicit payoffs, totaling at least $300,000. Honestly, the roster of retired ballers caught in this massive federal sting reads exactly like an old school lineup of gritty role guys and bench warmers spiced up with a few genuine hardwood legends. Williams found himself among 18 retired athletes slapped with federal charges, a group featuring that iconic six-time all-defensive squad, superstar Tony Allen. They also snagged former Lakers sensation Shannon Brown, plus Ronald Glenn Big Baby Davis, who banged in the paint for Boston, Orlando, and the LA Clippers. If you remember, Davis and Allen actually helped hang that 2008 championship banner up in Boston. Meanwhile, Brown secured 2 shiny rings while running the floor for the Lakers, and Melvin Ely snagged a trophy down in San Antonio back in 2007. Looking at the rest of the accused crew, only Anthony Roten, Ruben Patterson, and high flyer Darius Miles managed to drop double-digit points per game during their pro runs. The complete lineup of implicated guys featured Terrence Williams, Allen, Anderson, Tony Allen, Shannon Brown, William Bynum, Christopher Douglas Roberts, Melvin Ely, Jamario Moon, Milt Palacio, Ruben Patterson, Eddie Robinson, Greg Smith, Sebastian Telfair, CJ Watson, Antoine Wright, Anthony Roten, Darius Miles, and Big Baby Davis. Before we continue, smash that like button. These 18 dudes collectively banked over $343 million just playing ball, completely ignoring their shoe deals, off-court hustles, or whatever overseas checks they cashed internationally. Honestly, the sheer sloppiness of their crime is hilarious. Davis, Roten, and Allen literally told the league they got the exact same 6 teeth capped on the exact same afternoon, May 11th, 2016. Even crazier, several guys demanding cash for these bogus doctor visits weren't even standing on American soil when they supposedly sat in the dentist chair. And Williams didn't just forge a few simple receipts. The guy went full criminal mastermind, counterfeiting and distributing totally fake medical clearance documents for 3 different partners in crime. He even started stealing identities to keep the scam breathing, acting like he worked directly for the health fund's front office. At one point, he completely fabricated a fake email address, specifically engineered to look exactly like the official contact for the program's top executives. Plus, if anybody tried holding out on his bribe money, Williams turned incredibly hostile. Prosecutors say he actually posed as a top fund official to terrify a player who dodged paying the fee. The fallout was absolutely brutal. A judge slammed Williams with 10 hard years behind bars this past August. Ex-pro Glenn Big Baby Davis caught 40 months in federal lockup. After the jury found him guilty, Judge Caproni absolutely torched Davis right there in the courtroom during his final sentencing, declaring his actions far more dangerous than most of the 19 retired athletes wrapped up in this mess. Davis didn't just hand in fake receipts for phantom therapies. He actively escalated the hustle by pulling in a back doctor named Rashad Sanford to aggressively refile the exact same bogus claims that Williams originally cooked up. Make sure you're subscribed, because years later, this scandal is still taking down names. Retired floor general Sebastian Telfair just got dragged straight back to his cell because he completely blew his probation requirements tied to the massive healthcare scam. Now, Telfair is staring down another 6 months behind bars because he couldn't play by the rules of his parole. Imagine this. A guy who jumped straight from the prep circuit to the pros as a legendary New York streetball phenom, lasting 10 brutal seasons while pocketing $19 million in pure salary, is now trading his jersey for a jumpsuit simply because he wouldn't knock out some basic community service. Look, there is a legendary unwritten code in pro hoops. You absolutely never broadcast the association's messy, behind-the-scenes secrets to the world. You settle beefs strictly in the locker room. You filter every single thought about the front office. You shield the shield, and the shield shields you back. But Jaden Ivey just shattered that golden rule in the most explosive way possible. He didn't merely throw shade at the league, he literally blasted its biggest icons right to their faces. The dude claimed LeBron James, Michael Jordan, and Stephen Curry are completely disconnected from their faith. He essentially told the world the association promotes pure wickedness. He got aggressively personal, challenging guys in the locker room and the press about their private choices. He flat out branded the Bulls franchise as complete liars when they slapped him with a detrimental conduct tag, getting himself instantly banished from the hardwood. Meanwhile, back in our massive scam story, the locker room omerta crumbled in a separate yet totally catastrophic fashion. The second the federal agents started kicking indoors, the whole shady empire instantly collapsed. Once guys started singing, Williams was forced to plead out. Athletes sprinted to make backdoor deals. 9 different former stars confessed to the hustle, taking down their supposed mastermind right with them. All those rapid-fire plea bargains demanded full transparency. Testifying in court, handing over text messages, and pointing fingers at every single partner involved in the dirty network. The ensuing domino drop was absolutely ruthless. The moment one guy flipped, the heat on the rest of the crew became unbearable. Federal agents flawlessly charted the whole web, figuring out exactly which corrupt health workers printed the forged docs. They nailed 2 fancy dental spots out in Beverly Hills and a shady holistic clinic up in Washington State. Soon after, the league dropped a press release dripping with both corporate heartbreak and heavy PR spin. Executives labeled the massive betrayal incredibly tragic, desperately reminding the public that these safety nets were explicitly built to keep their athletes healthy and secure throughout their playing days and beyond. But top federal prosecutor Damian Williams served it up cold. Nobody gets a free pass from federal prison if they're stealing cash. But look at this insane double standard. Jaden Ivey exposed the association's toxic inner compass, blasting what he viewed as total spiritual decay from the front office down. The team cut him before dinner. Meanwhile, the guys who flipped in the massive healthcare sting ratted out their literal brothers, handing prosecutors the exact ammo required to lock everybody up. Predictably, any player who refused to talk caught the most brutal prison sentences handed down. Ivey's old leader in Detroit, JB Bickerstaff, perfectly summed up this crazy situation while discussing the young shooter's messy exit from the Windy City. He basically argued that you can never ignore the deep human toll this business takes on a player's mental state and life choices. Bickerstaff added, "I truly think this basketball league is the most welcoming space in all of professional sports, honestly championing every single background you could imagine." Drop your thoughts below. Welcome, basketball fanatics. Quickly smash subscribe. Discussing cultural backgrounds or romantic orientations, the association typically unites audiences. However, Ivey completely disagrees, claiming this organization currently penalizes specific outspoken voices while completely excusing others. He explicitly highlighted Anthony Edwards, who absorbed a $40,000 financial penalty for anti-gay commentary, yet easily retained his starting roster position, whereas Ivey found himself completely discarded. He argued this blatant double standard materialized because Edwards represents Minnesota's superstar franchise cornerstone, while Ivey functioned merely as an injured and highly expendable rotational asset. Basketball insiders emphasize his catastrophic blunder was not his foundational message. He avoided broadcasting horrific slurs commonly utilized by fellow professional competitors. However, he unfortunately went completely rogue online, manufacturing relentless internal friction throughout his locker room. Whether viewing him as a prophetic truth teller or disastrous cautionary benchmark, understand that the executives established an uncompromising boundary. Maintain your personal philosophies, but immediately, when those ideologies manifest locker room poison and completely saturate global internet platforms, management retaliates forcefully. Chicago's head strategist, Billy Donovan, bluntly informed attending journalists that Ivey comprehensively violated foundational franchise principles through his controversial digital broadcasting. Transitioning toward this disastrous healthcare swindle, obliterate that like button. Every implicated basketball veteran brutally discovered that this multi-billion-dollar corporate infrastructure will fiercely safeguard its legendary shield. Conversely, whenever individuals exploit these medical benefits, they face utter abandonment. Once somebody eventually confesses, the entire criminal enterprise disintegrates. Terrence Williams currently remains imprisoned inside a maximum security federal penitentiary for 10 agonizing years. Big Baby Davis received exceeding 3 calendar years incarcerated. Meanwhile, Sebastian Telfair recently returned to lockup because he spectacularly failed probationary supervision requirements. We are analyzing former championship winners, elite defensive juggernauts, alongside premier lottery selections. Everything instantly evaporated once federal investigators descended, which connects toward Jaden Ivey today. Newly circulated viral recordings documented the guard passionately delivering sidewalk sermons right after Chicago unceremoniously terminated his professional contract over his inflammatory opinions. He miraculously secures his guaranteed $10.1 million this campaign. The prospect is barely 24 years young, yet whether another general manager gambles upon him stays fiercely debated. 2 explosive narratives showcasing profoundly distinct methods regarding breaking your silence. One situation featured desperate retirees defrauding their lifelong brotherhood, watching their personal liberties instantaneously evaporate whenever the devastating reality inevitably surfaced globally. The secondary circumstance involved a promising backcourt talent determining his spiritual convictions vastly outweighed his lucrative basketball livelihood, broadcasting everything globally without expressing microscopic remorse. Consequently, management's administrative retaliation operated incredibly swiftly. Throughout professional basketball, verbalizing controversies consistently carries an astronomical price tag. However, navigating 2026, the devastating ramifications surrounding oversharing, whether addressing federal investigators or Instagram followers, proves utterly devastating. Subscribe for more.